to the July edition of our TEP Webinar Series. We are super delighted that you could join us today for what promises to be an eye-opening session. My name is Zeno, and I'll be your host in today's webinar. And thank you so much for being here once again. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, which is titled From Policy to Practice, Closing the Global Implementation Gap in Education Reform. And in our June session, which we held last month, we explored the missing middle, which focused on how teachers and school leadership, including classroom practice, can help to shape learning outcomes. And in May, we also spoke about how we can strengthen basic education through contextualized research in Nigeria. And in July this month, we will be zooming out and asking the big question: why do great education policies often fail to create real change on the ground? And together with our speakers, we shall be unpacking the disconnect between policy design and practical delivery, and spotlight some global insights from the World Bank reports, and amongst many others, basically. And I'm super delighted that we're going to be having the conversation today. And I'm even more delighted that you were able to join us. Before we go ahead, I think this would be a great time for you to introduce yourself. Would like to meet you. Please do tell us your name, tell us your organization, tell us one thing you also hope to learn in today's session. I'll be looking forward to reading your responses in the chat box. Please do engage us. Thank you. My role this morning will also be to briefly introduce you to the NICE community. NICE stands for the National Innovation Collaborative for Education. NICE was established in 2016, and since then we have a lot of offerings, which includes our monthly newsletter. We also do have our Education Unscripted podcast, and we've also had our virtual and in-person meetups like today's Innovation Webinar Series. We also have EdMeet, which is a bridge builder event that has been designed to provide a platform for education and other sector experts to collaborate and synergize for the purpose of solving complex problems and strengthening access to quality education using their platforms. We've had previous edition, which includes EdMeet Tech. We've also had EdMeet Foundational Learning, and we've also had EdMeet Climate Change. And in the coming months, we shall be having EdMeet AI. If you'd be happy to collaborate with us on any of these initiatives, please do kindly send us an email at nice@tepcenter.com. Moving on, for today, we shall be having a powerful panel lined up. We have three brilliant minds, and we are going to be having a single conversation with all of their voices in the mix. Each speaker will be taking us through their unique perspectives, and we'll open the floor for you to share your questions and give your thoughts or reflection. We also do encourage you that as the session goes on, please do feel free to use the live Q&A session while the conversation is ongoing so that you can be a part of that. Without any further ado, I would also be happy to introduce our incredible panelists who will lead us into the heart of today's conversation on bridging the gap between policy and practice in education reform. Firstly, we do have Katrina Webster, who is an education innovator, investor, and partnership leader at the Education Partnership Center. She brings a wealth of experience in advancing strategic education initiatives and building sustainable partnerships that support long-term system change. Hello, Katrina. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also do have Nurudeen Lawal, who is a technical and monitoring education advisor and the team leader founder of Quality Education Development Associates. He has deep roots in education implementation and community-led solutions. He is also passionate about making policies work where they matter most, especially in the classrooms. Thank you so much, Mr. Nurudeen, for being here. We're happy you could join us. We also do have Mr. Adeoye Abiodun Charles, who is an assistant director at the Teacher Professional Development Department, Ekiti State Universal Basic Education Board. He has years of hands-on experience in strengthening teacher capacity at the state level. He also brings a grounded understanding of how professional development strategies can drive meaningful policy implementations in schools. Thank you so much, Mr. Adeoye, for joining us. We are happy you could join us today. And finally, we have our moderator, who is Mr. Olasunkanmi Opeifa.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. He is a multiple award-winning teacher known for his innovative teaching strategies and commitment to improving classroom experiences. He also brings both expertise and energy to this important conversation. Thank you, Mr. Olasunkanmi, for joining. Happy you could be here. Thank you, sir. So before we go ahead, I would like to quickly remind us that the session has begun. So do feel free to share with your network, share the link to this webinar with your network. Let's amplify the conversation. You can also tweet or leave a commentary on specific things that speaks to you from the conversation using the hashtag TEP Webinar July. And we'll also be very happy to engage you or repost your thoughts for community visibility. And over to our moderator. Hi, Mr. Olasunkanmi. Thank you so much for joining us. You have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. And once again, good morning, everyone, and special good morning to our panelists. So to just quickly start the ball rolling, we don't even have much time. I just need to lay a fantastic background for what we're going to be discussing today. So let's just lay a foundation, and I will just go in this order, asking. So you permit me to put Mr. or Miss as a title to your name, okay? But if there's any other word preferred, please kindly let me know in the chat box so that I can do it appropriately. So I'll just go in the order of discussing with Mr. Abiodun. I have a question, then move on to Mr. Nurudeen, then go to Ms. Catherine with that. But let's lay a foundation for this. Across the world, especially Nigeria, education system are filled with a lot of crafted policies and beautiful reform blueprints. However, in many classrooms, you don't actually see these policies in the practical sense. Teachers often hear about new strategies and framework, but most of the time, they lack tools, training, and support to bring some of these things into the real-life teaching context. So in today's webinar, of course, we have fantastic educators who are policymakers and researchers, or those who have played one part or beautiful or the other in education. So we're going to be reflecting on the major thing, that is the gap, the implementation gap. How do we bridge the gap between the policy and practice? So we're going to be establishing this fantastically. And then we're also basically going to look at how teachers, the real players in the field, how they can bring policies to life, the role they will play. So please sit back and enjoy it. In case you also have questions, as has been said by the host earlier, you can also use the chat box to do this. So Mr. Abiodun, I believe you are set with me. Mr. Nurudeen, I believe you are set too. And Ms. Catherine, I believe we can roll this on quickly. All right, so my first question goes to Mr. Abiodun, as someone who has really played a lot of role in education and especially SUBEB. I mean, fantastically, if you go online now, anyone, and search SUBEB or UBEC policies, you will see fantastic ones around, say, workspace, health of teachers, a lot of digital implementation, and so many fantastic policies that you will see there. Now, as someone working within SUBEB, how do you see classroom? It truth there's a gap. So how do you see it, and why does this persist? So that's a question for you, sir.
Well, let me thank you, my brother. And I want to say good morning to everyone listening to us on this channel. When you look at this question that has to do with the gap between the state policy and what actually happens in the classrooms, permit me to start like this by saying what a policy is all about. No, policy has to do with it's like blueprints that guides everything that happens within the school setup, including curriculum design to teachers training, and then even funding of education. But alas, in this our system, in this part of the world, we have seen that the gap between the state level policy and classroom realities often, stems from a mix of structural, logistical, and human factors. And permit me to say that in our systems, when you talk about policy implementation, that is like turning the written policy into real-world action within the school setup. But looking at the question, looking at the gap between the policy and what actually happens, these gaps exist for some reasons. And one of it is, one, the teacher capacity and training. The teacher capacity and training, because the teachers, they are the implementer of these policies. If the capacity is not there, if the disposition is not there to implement, and in most cases, there is this gap at the point of planning. If you look at it very well, planning precedes policy, but succeeds implementation. So at the point of planning, if care is not taken, if teachers are not involved, who are the implementer of the policy, there is going to be a problem. Another one is over or underestimation of the cost of implementation. At times, if you are not accurate in your estimation about what is going to cost in implementing a particular policy, there may be problem in implementing that policy. And now others includes inaccurate statistical data to drive implementation, over reliance on external assistance, capability problem, like I said earlier, disposition conflict, lack of succession plan. At times, you put in a policy, but the plan to sustain that policy, if it's not there, the gap will be there. And the community realities at times, the policy at times does not factor in the actual things that happens in the real sense of it. And these are very many, some of those gaps that exist in our system, in education system. And the reason why they exist, like I said the other time, ranges from structural to human and to, logistic. These are the reason why all these gaps exist in the in implementation stage of our educational policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I love the fact that you acknowledge that and you are not defending that. Of course, it's a reality, and you've been able to point out the reasons why this happened, the structure, the human factors, and say logistics. And then maybe to sum this up in just one word, we can say probably willingness, okay, to actually push it through. I believe, well, I wouldn't, thank God you didn't mention fund anyway. So I think the fund to push it is there, but just the willingness that has to do with structure, the human factors and other things are the reasons there. So let's quickly move on to Mr. Nurudeen, that's bringing in international experience and global practices all around the world now to us in this. Sir, in your global experience, what makes education reform stick in the classrooms and what causes it to fail? And we've heard from Mr. Abiodun about the structures and other factors that can make it not work. But from your experience, can you tell us why it happens effectively in some cases and then why it also fails in some cases? Kindly unmute your microphone, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sukomi. Nice meeting you on this platform.
Thank you, sir.
I think I'll start from somewhere, and that is that policies are crafted to solve problems. And for me, I think that we are able to identify our problems. Sometimes we might not be having the right answers to solving those problems. That's why we have so much policies on ground. And how do we make it stick, and why is it not sticking? I would think that we most often don't have the political will. Someone talked about the political will. The last speaker, the director, talked about the political will to take the very difficult decisions around education. And for me, that seems to be the greatest factor in making policies work. If you don't have a system where you just make statements and you can't follow up those statements with real action, that is where the policy hiatus actually lies more than any other thing. So the accountability and transparency issue stands tall on why policy don't stick. And that is what we say across the country. If you look at primary school, or let's say public school teachers and private school teachers, you find out that public school teachers are better paid than most private school teachers. They are better paid. You know how many, I'll give you an example. Maybe you have like 35,000 or 40,000 private schools in Lagos now, and go and look at their salaries. Most of the schools, do an average of the salaries, you find that public school teachers are better paid. But where do we get better results? Where do parents prefer to send their children to? You can answer that question. And so for me, we need to, more than any other thing, take care of our accountability system for teachers, especially around making our policies work. Sukomi, is as bad as, I won't be naming states. So this is a field I've been around teacher education in the last 27 years. We did a teacher development needs assessment in a particular state. Just that result cannot be published. The state actually put down the money to do this teacher development needs assessment that profiled the teachers in the state, but that results cannot be published due to what? The political will to be able to do that, the political circumstances around doing that. And I think that that is one of the biggest factors that we have around teacher education policies that we have in Nigeria. We have the National Teacher Education Policy, which many states have not even adopted or adapted or contextualized. And very few states have done this. And even those that have done it, how much are they implementing that? One other problem is that our pre-service is such that it continues to churn out these not too good products that we have to continue to take in to the system, regardless of whether they are good enough or not good enough. And so if we are able to tackle the issue at the pre-service level, then we'll be able to solve a lot of the problem, because as we are having teachers that we need to train in service and improve that level, we are also taking in those that have not been well trained from the colleges of education. One other major problem is that there is no long-term planning for teachers' need and welfare in Nigeria. No long-term planning in terms of, I'll give you an example. I personally believe that the problem we have in education today is as a result of education for all, and partly due to the fact that we needed to recruit teachers into the system through various means, pivotal teacher scheme and all of that. We're trying to just, make up for teachers' need in the system. And through that, we were able to bring in both the good and the bad into the system, and the system collapsed as we have it today. We need to do long-term planning for our teachers' need and the welfare of those teachers if our policies will be working. The teachers gap in most states is very large. I know in states where they have almost 48,000 teachers now, and they need like 90,000 teachers. That is a big cost, which planning can take care of if that state is planning enough. Um, Teacher deployment is a major problem in most states. Um, and so you find the good teachers mostly in urban areas, and those that know have people in political power mostly in urban area, whereas it becomes an equity issue.
What kind of investment do you think would be very effective in helping reform move from just ordinary policy document to real classroom change, where everybody will be carried along effectively, not just a policy where we just want to do a pilot program somewhere in 2 or 3 schools and we claim we have done something, and then so many other people will just be seeing it on the news, but we not feel the real implementation. What kind of investment can really make these reforms very effective and then real classroom change?
Thank you for that question, and thanks for having me on this panel. I think invest policy in practice. So it's not enough to just have a strong policy on paper, but we need investments that directly support the implementation of those policies. So, for example, TEP Center is an implementing partner on the Partnership for Learning for All in Nigeria, which is funded by FCDO. And through this project, we've been working to strengthen regulatory frameworks for low-cost private schools. And as you all know, many of those private schools often operate outside of formal government systems, but they're also serving a large portion of learners, especially in underserved communities. So a lot of policy attention in this project has been placed on improving the quality and oversight of these schools. But implementation has lagged because schools lack both the capacity and the resources really to respond and meet these demands. So as part of this project, the PLANE project, we've been supporting the development of public-private partnership models, and we've created platforms for dialogue between regulators and school owners. And we're also working directly with school associations to identify the real day-to-day needs, things like access to management tools, teacher training, and basic instructional materials. So investments are most effective, when spaces for dialogue are opened up, and when all actors are involved in discussing what is actually needed to move the policy from the page to implementation.
Thank you very much, Ketri. And that's succinct and profound. And I love that statement, where there is space for dialogue, where the people that's supposed to carry it out are also brought on the table, and those who are implementing are there too, and those who are creating the policy rather are there, and investors can see that yes, this is going to be very practical and the effect can be seen. So we'll still take it and still ask further questions there. But let me go back to Mr. Abiodun. And then still going back to the government. I mean, I love this triangle movement where we are just looking at it in a very robust way. So, Mr. Abiodun, let's look at some practical ways SUBEB or UBEC now can best support teachers to translate some of this new policy. You've talked about the challenges, okay, that we face and why the gap persists. So we want to look at it now. What can we do? How can we translate these new policies into action? What do you think? What are the practical or pragmatic steps that can be taken?
Thank you very much. Just like I said the other time that there is need for us to accept the fact that gap exists. There's no point being economical with these truths. But now that we identified as the gap, this will take us to the next level of looking at what will be done to bridge the gap. And just like you said the other time, UBEC is an intervention agency that supports the implementation of basic education policy. And this is being carried out through SUBEB of various states. And to, to support in a better way the implementation of policy in such a way that the policy on paper will turn to reality in the classroom. There are a lot of things that government, so to say, needs to do, which SUBEB, UBEC are currently doing. There are some action that have been taken, some are ongoing, and I believe that with this kind of session, we'll be better informed as an agent of government. One of those things that can be done is has to do with capacity building of teachers. Because if you want whatever things you have on paper to be translated to action, you can't leave out the hand that will implement it. And as such, there is need to train the teachers. And training this teacher is not just training, not just anyhow training. Like one of our presenter was equally saying, or identifying the gap between those in private and public and those in the rural and the urban setting. There is one thing now that leveled everybody up, that puts us on same platform, and that is technology. So training of teachers, the digital literacy for them, improving their ICT skills, we go a long way because the teacher is aware of what the peer policy is about, what is required of him or her to do in the class, the action to be taken, the when and how to go about it. And the same knowledge that somebody in Ekiti State is having is same with the knowledge that somebody in Abuja is having. In that wise, we will be on the same platform. And again, if we have something like a feedback mechanism, a situation whereby the government or the agency will create a teacher-led feedback loop where educators, teachers can share their opinions, can share their experience, can give feedback on what happens. And this will help the policy maker to know what is missing, what to add, and what to remove. And again, school-based mentorship and coaching can also be put in place. Instead of having a one-off workshop or training session, we can make use of school support officers who, apart from having their training, they will also from time to time mentor the school system. There is one thing to monitor, is another thing to mentor. When you mentor, you are providing an assistance to teacher in implementing the policy. You assist them, you show them the way, you demonstrate, and you assist them doing it. So if we have something like that, school-based mentorship attached to every school in all locations, this one will also go a long way. And beyond that, if you make policy and you are not making available necessary resources to implement, it will be a failure. You want teachers to do this, you want teachers to do that. Instructional materials should be put in place. Infrastructure should be put in place. Accommodation, instructional materials, all of these things should be adequate in schools. When that happens, it helps them. And there should be incentive to the teachers. I heard one of our presenters talking about the welfare of the teacher. This is very, very important. Like somebody will always say that a good leg can manage a bad road, but a bad leg cannot manage good road though. So there is need for us to prioritize the welfare of the teachers who are the implementer of this policy. And all of this, honestly speaking, in the recent times, UBEC, SUBEB, they are doing fantastically well. And as far as I know, There are a lot of trainings that they have embarked on in recent times, and evidences abound that people, states are carrying out training like school-based model training, where teachers will be gathered in their cluster, very close to their school, and they will be trained on method of teaching. Not only that, leadership training is being rolled out to head teachers, selected head teachers across in the states and across the country. As far as I know, as we speak, training is ongoing in not less than 30 states of this country. And not that alone, we have stride and sprint training, we have ECCD training, we have literacy training anchored by Jollyphonies in most of the states, and teachers have been trained in their numbers in compliance with all these things we are seeing. But we are not seeing that these are enough. We still have a long way to go in bridging this gap, this dangerous educational gap that exists between the policy making and the implementation of the policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Abiodun. That was totally profound. And I must say, yes, we have all this, as we have said, actually carried out. And I bet in the next 5 to 10 years in this country, education will surely maintain its position. However, the question still remains the same thing. What you cannot implement, you cannot measure, as we said, and what you cannot measure, you cannot improve. You see fantastic training everywhere. As a teacher in the classroom, I remember, some of the trainings you mentioned now, stride, sprint, I've been trained there. I've also trained teachers, and then I can just tell you that the difference between that great teacher who is doing well in the classroom and the other one that is just a regular teacher is now coming to the classroom to carry out this exactly. Let me just quickly start an example. Years back, about 10 years ago now, I had a training under British Council, and we were taught critical thinking. We should just do something differently in our classroom, and that was just it for me. I got into the classroom and I started implementing something differently. Now, we mark the word implementing. Yes, the government will do the training. Now, there's implementation gap there in between. And so I did that. Nobody to monitor me. Now, the point now is of us going for the training, how many actually implemented it? And that's where the question of mentoring and monitoring also comes in. But I'm not here to just talk about it all through. I still have Mr. Nurudeen in the house to take it again further from where you dropped it, Mr. Abiodun. And the question to you, Mr. Nurudeen, is how can government better design reforms that are actually realistic for teachers with limited resources and training? Now, Mr. Abiodun talked about training of teachers going all around, and I can say, yes, I know a couple of states that I can say, yes, trainings are going on there now. Now, most of the time, some of this training seems to even be off the head teachers. Okay, they are probably even not implementable, let me put it that way. But yeah, how can we make a realistic reform such that is something that we can actually practice down there? And I believe after that, I'll also bring in further questions to make it clearer. So, Mr. Nurudeen, over to you.
Olasunkanmi again, thank you for that question. I'm going to depart a little bit, and I'm going to just talk about an idea I've been, telling various SUBEB chairmen or chairpersons. And that is at the root of everything that we're talking about. I said, don't undertake any reform. Don't give money to anybody. Just go back to your state. Go and do a merit-based selection of head teachers in your school, so that all your school have the best people as the school heads. Don't train any teacher for the next 1 year.
That's deep.
What you should do is train head teachers in school leadership. These head teachers that you have selected newly, train all of them on school leadership and school effectiveness for 1 year. And I promise them that they will see nothing less than 20% improvement, not in the school, in learning outcomes of their schools, without any other thing. And so at the root of all of what we are talking about is school leadership. How do you determine who's going to go for a training? If the school head is not the one saying, I don't have a good English teacher, my English teacher needs to be updated. My math teacher is not good enough. He needs to go and get trained on this. My social studies teacher needs to be upskilled. What is school-based teacher training? Does school-based training means that it must take place in the school, or that it's generated, the need for training and for capacity building is generated from the level of the school? So we need a digitalized system where, after training all of these head teachers, through digital system, you can monitor what is going on in their schools. We need to profile our teachers so that, see, I've been in a state where they have this lot of unqualified and people who should not be in teaching for political reasons. And they said, we can't drive them away. We can't tell them to go. So what are you doing? What are they doing in the system? Why can't you just, if you can't drive them away, why can't you just pay them off? And then do a merit-based selection of teachers into your schools. All of these things still boils down to merit. Those that are good teachers and need the teaching job don't get it. Those that get into the system are not well motivated. And all of this is just about political will. That little thing I told you, go back to your state and do a merit-based selection of your head teachers. You will not get maybe 10% of states in Nigeria that can do that. You will not. I've said it to more than 5. Nobody has taken the challenge. So if you don't have the best people managing your school, I'm not saying the best in capacity, the best you can get in your state, then how can you say you want to improve anything in the school? I think that I've talked about digital system. We need to digitalize our system so that recruitment is digitalized, deployment is digitalized, training is digitalized, transfer. We need to manage our teachers with data on a digital platform. And I talk about school level, what school level training means. It doesn't mean it's taking place in the school. It has to be need generated from the level of the school by an academic leader, not a head teacher. The head teacher is the academic leader. He must realize that. And he cannot realize that if he doesn't have sufficient training and sufficient power to do that, authority to do that. That is when teacher accountability will work. Because right now, there is little I go back to accountability again. And then we must promote teachers' welfare. That cannot be overemphasized. We need to put in place, I'm really canvassing for that at this point, Nigeria needs an independent teacher professional body that will run probably in parallel with TRCN, or TRCN will have a couple of them that they will regulate. But that is one big reform that I think we should be looking at so that it is competitive. If you don't have certificate from this, so we have ICANN, we have ANA, we have NMA, we have this, we have that. Why don't we have such in teaching and in the profession that we love so much? We need to prioritize teachers' needs assessment so that we can profile our teachers, and those that we don't need in the system, we'll tell them to go. And we pay them off handsomely because the future of children is at stake here. Thank you. Over.
Wow. I mean, that is
That is deep, and that is just, I love the bitter truth there. You see, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I must say, as a teacher, I saw this first, and I believe teachers in the on the platform here today can also attest to that, that once there's a change of leadership, either positively or negatively in a way, there will be something different in your school. I mean, imagine you having a fantastic leader who is pushing you and motivating you to do a lot. I mean, head teacher, principal, and the rest. And suddenly there's a transfer for another person to come in, and then the person now just brings down the entire vision of the previous one. You will see how the spirit of everybody will just go down. So thank you so much. And there are so many things that you also shared there. You talk about digitalization of our system. You talk about teachers' welfare. That's important. Teachers' welfare. And then the profound thing you brought in here now. I mean, it's really bitter to swallow. I must say, very hard to swallow. That is competitiveness of our regulation body. Wow, that's a fantastic thought. I mean, is this just out of the box where we can have not just TRCN regulating the teacher standards here now, but we have so many other bodies. And once competition comes in, you can see that yes, there will be the willpower there. And that's truth there, that teachers should, if you are not meant to be in the classroom, if you are not a professional, please kindly exit. Yeah, but however, there are a lot of challenges there. We can't really be having that conversation now. But taking it there, quickly, let's come to Catherine, where we are going to be looking at the funding, basically. Okay, many teachers actually don't really feel the impact of education partnership or funding in their school. I must say, from the little I know, we see a lot of funding of this. Yes, we see a lot of funding from different development partners, intervention partners here and there, billions of naira that SUBEB is bringing in, FCDO is doing so much, and so many other organizations like that. I mean, you hear billions of naira into education. And however, you hardly see this impact in the life of teachers. So what needs to change on how these partners are structured so that they support actual teaching and learning, not just some high-level goals that are just up there, but the real impact is not felt in the teachers. Catherine, over to you.
I think one of the major problems that you're highlighting here is how teachers are often feeling left out of the equation when partnerships are designed from the top down. And so one of the ways on Plain, which I mentioned before, that we're working to address this issue is we're engaging with school associations and education stakeholders directly in helping to shape reforms and public-private partnership models for low-cost schools. And we're seeing that this is making a real difference, giving teachers and school leaders the space to articulate their needs and shape the kind of support that they are receiving. So when we think about education investments, we really need to think about creating formal roles through partnerships for teachers, not just as beneficiaries, but as co-designers of these initiatives. And then when that happens, what we'll see is that funding reaches beyond the policy level and starts to influence their realities and what's actually happening in the classroom.
All right, thank you very much for that. Yes. Okay. So that directly taking the policy, the intervention, the funding directly to the teachers. And I must say that if I have not even witnessed anyone, I witnessed that of FCDO, yes, the way they actually take it down to the grassroots there, especially in the KKJ, that's Kaduna, Kano, and Jigawa. And I could see also they are stretching their wings across. So that is, I can say that perfectly. So let me come back to Mr. Abiodun. Please, if you are, as you are joining us now, please, you have any question, please don't forget to drop it in the chat box, okay? You can also share your thoughts too as we move on, so that I will come there after this round of session and then read your own contribution too, because we are all discussing and we're having this robust discussion to move our education forward. Mr. Abiodun, I'm back to you now. I want to talk about that particular thing that your department is known for, and that's one of the things that I really hold there. If anything has made me a very sound teacher in this country, is the power of professional development. And we've been talking about that. Mr. Nurudeen had emphasized that one, okay, training the teachers, very important. You also had talked about it a bit, but I want to also say more about it. how does teachers development, professional development in your state? Okay, how can it really, in a practical sense of it now, help bridge the gap between what's on paper and what is possible? And I'm going to pick an example there. Years back, I was asked to talk about objective in a school and the use of technology in the classroom. And the school owner actually complained that, okay, how can I, asked me how I would help them to make sure that teachers actually use the technology they've been trained for. Yes, teachers have been trained to use technology, but they were never implementing it. And I told the school, now it's very simple. Don't they submit their lesson plan? Ask them at a point, at what point will they use a particular tool in the real sense of it? It should be stated in the objective. And then with that, you will now observe the class and see that this is being used, not just a teacher standing in front of Bobby board or carrying laptop to the classroom and nothing is happening. So in your state, sir, how are you helping teachers' professional development practically in such a way that what they are being trained is actually being practiced in the classroom?
Thank you very much. As an individual who had been in the teachers' professional development department for quite some years now, you know, we have observed over the years that when you train teachers, you will agree with me that most of teachers at times, when they attend training, they are much more particular about the training allowance and the transports. And aside that, they are also mindful of the kind of food you will give them there. But in the recent times, we are putting in everything possible to ensure that we change their orientation. And what are we doing about this? Aside from training them in various aspects of implementing educational policy, so to say, and contents, we also ask them to do the following. One, we ask them to cascade it at school level. When they are trained like that, by the time you go back to your school, you just have to cascade or gather other teachers and tell them what you have learned. Before now, it wasn't like that. But what we are doing now is that the moment you attend our training, you go back and train others. And apart from that, there is 2 layers or 2 forms of assessment that is being carried out on teacher professional development. The first one is need-based assessment. You don't just train ahead and carry out any training, no. And we are appreciating SUBEB because SUBEB this time will tell you the focal training, and aside that, they give allowance for state initiative. And this state initiative are the training that are geared towards the needs of the states. And how do you come about this? You carry out what we call needs-based assessments. When you carry out that, you identify the gaps. You identify what your state needs. And you now design a training contents that will address just that. And when you train teachers, you ask them to go back and train others because the resources that is available to the states is not enough to train everybody at a go. And as such, the few that are trained, we go back and train. Apart from that, we have another group. You know, recently, we have a quality assurance department. This is a department put in place that goes to school to quality assure the services, the teaching services in the school. What they do is they ensure that government gets value for every kobo spent on education. They'll be there. They look at what they are doing. They look at it from the perspective of the 7 key areas, which includes the learners, the learners' achievement, environment, leadership, achievement, and some other things like that, which they have to look at. And not that alone. When they go to school like that, and they look at them, whatever report they get, the school support officers are equally in place to ensure that they provide necessary support and assistance to teacher in the course of implementing implementing the skills they have acquired during training. All of this put together, by the time the training is done completely and all these series are completed, there is another layer of assessment being carried out, and that is impact assessment, where we get feedback whether or not what they have been trained for, if they are actually carrying it out in school system. And all of this aim at equipping them with practical tools that will help them to translate what we have on paper to a reality, a classroom reality. Any reforms you make, any policy you make, and you are not doing follow-up, you are not measuring where you are, which part of it has been attained or which one is being left out, it's like throwing away the resources. And that's exactly what we are doing in a TPD department to bridge the gap, this wide gap between the policy and the implementation.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. That's profound. And I believe that carrying out all this, I think we should start seeing results. I mean, the question I didn't want to even ask for that, which everybody would just need to answer, is when we do all this, do we also take our impact assessment down to the student results, where, because the essence of education is just make sure that, yes, the learner are getting the impact is really felt in the lives of the learner. Now let's look at it now. I mean, what was the result before this program and what is now the result after the program? Do we have assessments down to that level where we compare performance in our either external examination or even formative assessments within the school? I mean, that's a question for everybody to answer. I'm not asking Mr. Abiodun alone now, the teacher and everybody. We just need to answer this question. I just got a nudge that I need to be rounding off now, so I'm going to put all our questions together. But before I go to Mr. Nurudeen and also go to Ms. Catherine there are a lot of conversations going on here in the chat box here. Somebody is talking about how you can be shocked now to see the salary some private school teachers are actually paying. They're from premium private school teachers are actually paying, and that's the truth. You get to some schools, you'll be so shocked that, oh, you mean teachers are still going home with such an amount of money? And then when you look at the name of the school, very big out there, but when it comes to teachers' welfare, it is still very poor. All right, so many other things to talk about. Let me just quickly see if I can go through that. Okay, time will not permit me because I think I'm having a little challenge here with the device. So let me just go to Mr. Nurudeen. I will come back to also pick our thoughts. Mr. Nurudeen, we are going just to sum one or two thoughts together here, where we are going to be looking at taking further what Mr. Abiodun had said about practical example. Can we look at a particular? Do you have a country in mind where they actually bridge the gap between the policy and implementation so that Nigeria can learn? And then we further now bring it back to Nigeria, how teachers actually feel disconnected. They only get policies made for them without their thoughts even being carried into it. So do we have a country where they carry out a lot of the implementation because the teachers were part of the policy? So I'm bringing these questions together for where the teachers are part of the policy and then they were part of it and it became a very smooth sail. Let me set an example. Years back, a particular book was recommended here for us as English teachers in the FCT. And by the time we opened it right, left, and center, we said it was very useless for the final examination, which is WAEC. And for good 4 years, many of us kept on hitting it. And one day, the government decided to add teachers as part of those who were going to be reviewing the books. And that's how we got this particular book out of the system. Now, if that was never done, we would not have been able to be part of that policy and the implementation. So over to you, sir. That's a country, and then let's see how teachers can also be part of policy making and for effective implementation.
I think that we have sufficient examples. Sukanmi, honestly, I'm a bit of a frustrated educationist. The reason for that is we are not like short of examples, both within our region and out of our region. We talked about countries like Rwanda, where things are changing very fast. We talk about Finland, we talk about Singapore and all those places. For example, in Singapore, it's so not in Singapore, but it should be this way. Education should be a national priority. And for that reason, if it's a national priority, then it's not just about, it's not at the level of the teacher or at the level of educationists, it's at the level of everybody. We need to be concerned about what goes on in education. And if you pick a country like Singapore, where I think is the 80th percentile or so that can only come into teaching upward. That really restricts the number of people going into teaching. But that's not the example I want to use. I just want to pick Ghana that have almost the same thing with us. If you're in Ghana, you think you're in Nigeria. Their teacher education system is such that it's run from the national. So the national employs all teachers and pay all teachers. So the issue of you getting salary and me not getting salary is not there. The salary is relatively better in terms of being able to take you home. Teachers' welfare is very top. And at the pre-service level, what you see is that they pay salary to teacher educators. So it makes people want to do teaching, come into teaching. And there's free food, it's all boarding, and you are catered for there. Your welfare is taken care of there. And when you come into the system, you have option of being taken up by the government automatically. So this, for what I've told you now, has to do with what? Long-term planning of teachers' need in a country for it to work. And because of that, in Ghana today, going to private, where you see people rush to send children to is private primary school. At the secondary school level, both the rich and the poor wants to send their children to public secondary schools. And so that system is working for them. So I would very much recommend that we should look into how we make the teachers that come into the system, the teacher issue should be a national issue and should be handled at all fronts. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Nurudeen. I must call you an outlier because you are chunking out very, let me say, not too common suggestions here. And I mean, if you look into it, these are not just ordinary suggestions. They are suggestions that are coming from the fact that, yes, it has been practiced somewhere. And yes, so everybody will always tell you that education is not the responsibility of federal government. And I love the fact that you are not looking at it from that angle now. You are looking at it, okay, let everybody be responsible, and then the responsibility to come directly from the top so that the level of inequality, especially in teachers' welfare, recruitment, and everything, will reduce. And that is another thing we also just need to just turn our face to say, yes, let's look at it from this angle. How come that I'm a teacher in Ogun State and my minimum wage, my real take-home salary is 18,000 naira as a civil servant, and in Ekiti State, what I'm having there is about 50-something thousand. I mean, the disparity is so high. I mean, we just had that from NLC of recent. Before we go to catering, let me just quickly look at the chat box as I'm rounding off now. Yes, we talk about teachers training and their head. Yes, the ripple effect will surely encapsulate the entire school. Thank you, Farouk, there. With Bumi is talking about going to take some deep visionaries to lead. You are talking about leading there now. And so many, I mean, I can't really go into it. And then the final one from Joy Ifeanyi is saying that this deep insight, yes, we are sharing deep insights here, both from government angle, from global development partners, and from investors in education. So let me quickly go to Catherine. Catherine, please, can you share briefly with us the examples, from real-life examples of where your organization, your development partners, and the rest have really actually invested and you have seen the real impact in the classroom? I mean, you've talked about playing activities here and there. I can say that for sure. So you want to share more examples, especially across the northern and the southern part of the country?
Thank you for that.
I think you're muted. Okay, sorry, go ahead. I think it's mine.
Okay, thanks. I was going to say, In terms of examples of where organizations have really invested in education and invested in strategies in the classroom, one thing that comes to mind is my own research for my dissertation, where I was focusing on the role of corporate social responsibility and philanthropy in funding education initiatives, both in Nigeria and in Guyana. And one of the key issues around that is that sometimes funding doesn't really focus on that last mile of implementation. So even with strong policies, teachers can't really act on those policies without the tools, without the training that we've talked so much about. They can't, they don't have the time and the resources to turn those policies into reality. And my dissertation research kind of highlighted where that can happen and where that's the case within these partnerships that corporates might engage with NGOs to support education. Companies were funding schools, funding infrastructure projects, but oftentimes those partnerships and those projects lacked alignment with what teachers actually needed in order to improve instruction. So what I found that where these partnerships were more successful was when investments were actually bundled, where investments focused on pairing resources with training, with mentorship, and with clear implementation and guidance of how that funding should be used, and with a clear strategy in mind. And so I think the bottom line is that any strategy, any investment in education needs to be co-developed with the educators and with those who are actually implementing to ensure that the tools make sense, and that they can actually be used.
Yeah, thank you very much, Catherine. Yes, I quite agree with you. I heard you saying, talking about development partners, talking about the NGOs on the ground, and I've seen where this works perfectly because some of these NGOs are actually the ones really at the grassroots, and they can really take the intervention fund to where it's supposed to be. And thankfully now, I mean, investors are not just looking at giving the entire money to the government; they're even looking at initiatives, small initiatives in local communities. How can we fund your very basic work there? I know of a teacher in Nigeria that puts some resources together in a school where the student had no furniture, and then she was able to provide a lot of that. And then she was supposed to get further funding from investors like you, and then she went further again to provide enough furniture there. I mean, talking about one person that I have. Okay, let me just mention him. I think someone like you can, if you search for this online, there are so many other teachers like that, and there are so many other intervention projects that can be funded. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time. I mean, having a conversation with you all. Let me quickly take this. Sylvester Agbara said something profound there. He questioned a lot of things around leadership, around collaboration, implementation, how to evaluate, and everything. And in summation there, he said, until these questions are answered, we are not ready for a genuine change. So there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered in education. However, I must tell you that we may not be where we want to be, but I'm saying it as someone who has been in this field for almost 20 years too. We are not where we used to be. So before we go today, let me quickly just go around everyone in about 30 seconds. Mr. Adeoye, Abiodun, Mr. Nurudeen, Lawal, and Ms. Catherine, please just give us in 30 seconds summation of your thoughts in 30 seconds. So I start with Mr. Abiodun.
I want to appreciate you for having me. I mean me to say this, that our policy, both the policy formulator, the implementer, all of us, we must do it with sincerity of heart. We must be sincere with ourselves. And again, I want to say that every policy that is being made from everywhere should be tailored towards solving an identified problem of our country. And finally, is that our policy making, the implementer, who are the teachers in this regard, should not be disconnected from the policy that is being made from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I'm taking anything away from here, I love that sincerity. Whatever policy we are making is not just for the paper, but it's meant to be implemented and for it to be followed through. Mr. Nurudeen, quickly, 30 seconds.
I want to say thank you to you and other panelists for their wonderful contributions. I'm taking away so much from the discussion, but at this stage, I'm really asking that we need political will to move things forward. And without it, our education will continue to struggle at all levels, not just teacher policy or teacher implementation issues, but every part of our education will continue to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We talked about political will, and it's coming back to that again. And I'm over to you, Catherine, in 30 seconds.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the conversation. It's been great to learn from the other two panelists as well. One key takeaway that I'm taking from this conversation is that education reform is really reliant on the proper functioning and alignment of various systems, and also the coordination and participation of teachers and community leaders and partners. And whether it's through public-private partnerships or philanthropy or donor support, investments need to prioritize approaches that are locally grounded and teacher informed, and they need to be designed with implementation in mind that creates space for real feedback, for flexibility, and for shared ownership at every level of the system. So I'm hopeful that we continue to have these conversations and that eventually we can work towards getting schools and teachers what they actually need to support an effective education system.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine. Yes, I'm going away with everything here now. We talk about sincerity, we talk about political will, and here now, Catherine is concluding with priority. So once we prioritize our education, we have the implementation. I mean, so many things to talk about. Adeoye is saying that the conversation should not end here. Of course, please take it to your social media spaces there, as has been said, okay, and take it to Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and let's continue this conversation there. So I'll be signing out from here now. I remain Olasunkanmi, Opeifa, and I believe in quality education. Over to you, the host.
Wow, what a powerful session that has been. Please join me giving a big virtual round of applause to our speakers. Thank you so much for such an insightful session. A special thank you to Katrina Webster, Nurudeen Lawal, Adeoye, Abiodun, and Olasunkanmi. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation. And I would also like to thank everyone for attending. Thank you for sharing your questions, and thank you for engaging us with your opinion. Thank you for just, spurring on the conversation. And most importantly, thank you for staying till the end of the session. I would also like to thank our speakers for really training insightful tips on the subject matter. And I would also like to acknowledge the members of the press who have joined us today. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm still looking forward to our virtual applause in the chat box. Yeah, I can see some hands. Thank you. Thank you. Let's give it up to our speakers. And the recording, I would like to say that the recording for this session will be available on our YouTube channel at TEP Center. You can find us, you can subscribe and stay updated to watch even some of our previous webinars. And I believe the link would be shared in the chat box so that you can subscribe to stay updated with this particular conversation. You can also learn more about our work and all of our other upcoming events if you follow us across our media platforms. You can find us at TEP Center across all media platforms. That is on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if you also like more information, you can check out our website, which is www.tepcenter.com, or you can also email us at info@tepcenter.com to learn more about all of our services. And please do remember that you can join our community You can subscribe to our mailing list. I believe that the link will also be shared in the chat box so that you can get to know when our next webinar will be coming up and all of our other exciting events. And once again, I would like to thank you for staying true to the end of the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a special thank you to all of our speakers and also to our moderator. I'll see you next time, same time next month. Bye for now. Thank you for joining.